Fifth Freedom flights are exciting, particularly if they involve wide-body aircraft. In case you didn't already know, a Fifth Freedom service is where an airline operates A to B to C, with A being an airport in its homeland. It may gain traffic rights to carry passengers and freight from B to C and vice versa, legs that do not touch its home country. Of course, one-stop services do not automatically mean they have Fifth Freedom rights. And so, when it comes to the Southeast Asian giant that is Singapore Airlines, the Star Alliance carrier operates a few interesting Fifth Freedom services. It's these routes that we'll examine for today's video. Using Cirium data to examine Singapore Airlines' entire network for this forthcoming Northern Summer 2024 shows that 4 routes have traffic rights. The first is Singapore to Los Angeles via Tokyo Narita. Flying northeast to Tokyo and onwards to Los Angeles, the service has flight number SQ12. Returning to Singapore, it's SQ11. This route has a daily frequency and is operated by the Boeing 777-300ER. There's been a bit of diversity on this route over the years, as the 747-400 and A380 were previously used on this Trans-Pacific service as well. Competing on the Tokyo to Los Angeles route are a number of major players: the big US carriers American, Delta and United, and of course the 2 big Japanese airlines ANA and Japan Airlines. Additionally, low-cost carrier Zip Air, an offshoot of Japan Airlines, also flies between the 2 cities. American connects LAX and Haneda with 2 daily 787-8 services. Delta currently flies to Tokyo Haneda from Los Angeles with the A330-900, while United flies to Narita with the 787-9 and Haneda with the 787-10. On the Japanese side, ANA flies to Los Angeles from both Narita and Haneda. Combined, there are 3 daily services, all using the 787-9. For Japan Airlines, Los Angeles is currently served by a 777-300ER from Haneda and a 787-8 from Narita. Zip Air flies out of Narita using the 787-8. Next up is Singapore to New York via Frankfurt. While it's now operated by the 777-300ER as well, it also saw the 747-400 and A380 in the past. The A380 was actually deployed until early May 2023. While it's arguable that more passengers would prefer the A380, the 777 does offer more freight capacity. Also operating daily, this service has flight number SQ26 flying west to Frankfurt and New York, and SQ25 returning home. Competing on the New York-Frankfurt route are German carriers Condor and Lufthansa, as well as US carriers United and Delta. Condor operates the A330-900 between the cities, while Lufthansa takes the 747-8 to Newark and the 747-400 and A340-300 to JFK. United Airlines operates the 787-10 from Newark, while the A330-200 is used by Delta. The third route on our list is Singapore to Houston via Manchester. This service is operated 5 times weekly using the Airbus A350-900. Flying out of Singapore, this service is flight SQ52. Returning from Houston, it's SQ51. In 2016, Singapore Airlines switched this Houston route from Moscow, which revolved around energy demand. Due to Russia's economic problems, Manchester was chosen instead. It was the carrier's first transatlantic service from the UK and remains among the world's longest one-stop services. Launching this route made it the second time Manchester had non-stop Texas flights after Pakistan International ended Pakistan-Manchester-Houston in 2006, which occasionally used the 747-200. Switching from Moscow to Manchester also meant the end of Singapore-Munich-Manchester, with Munich becoming a terminator service, which continues today. There are no other airlines at the moment that fly direct between Houston and Manchester. It's not exactly a high-demand city pair on its own, but travellers from Manchester heading to Houston would certainly benefit from United's sizable operations at the Texas airport, which allows for a one-stop connection to dozens of destinations across the United States. And finally, we have Singapore to Barcelona via Milan-Malpensa. With a frequency of just 3 times weekly, this service is currently operated by the Airbus A350-900. Previously, the carrier operated this service 5 times per week. Outbound, the service has flight number SQ378, while it's SQ377 on the way back to Singapore. The intra-European portion between Milan and Barcelona is quite special considering no other operator deploys the A350. Launched in January 2022, this service allows passengers to experience wide-body comfort on a 1 hour and 40-minute European flight if you time it right. If you prefer to avoid the 11-hour drive or nearly 16-hour train journey, then other airlines connecting the cities include budget airlines Ryanair, EasyJet, Vueling and Wizz Air. Compared with some of the European low-cost airlines, it's admittedly a slightly more expensive option, but perhaps well worth it for the experience. For example, a low-cost carrier flight between the two cities might be as low as $20 to $30. On Singapore Airlines, however, it could be more like $80 to $90. Singapore Airlines is the only full-service carrier connecting the two cities, as national airlines like Iberia and ITA Airways connect Barcelona and Milan through their respective hubs at Madrid and Rome. In addition to the 4 routes we just mentioned, Singapore Airlines has a daily service between Singapore and Cape Town via Johannesburg. Outbound, it's SQ478 and SQ479 returning to Singapore. Served for many years, it uses the 253-seat A350-900, the Star Alliance members' lowest capacity wide-body. It does not have any local rights on the intra-South Africa leg, nor would you expect it to, as so-called cabotage, an airline flying domestically in another country, is rarely granted to foreign airlines for obvious reasons. Approximately 70% of its South African passengers transit to another flight in Singapore. Between April 2022 and October 2023, Singapore Airlines had another one-stop service without traffic rights due to cabotage. Inherited from Silk Air, whose operations were subsumed into Singapore Airlines, it operated Singapore Davao Cebu, Singapore, using the 737 MAX 8. Davao and Cebu are in the Philippines. And then, historically speaking, Singapore Airlines has a long history of operating one-stop services that no longer exist. For example, 20 years ago, in March 2004, it had 13 stopping routes. One worth mentioning was Singapore-Zurich-Manchester on the 747-400. Milan later replaced Zurich, and then, as we already know, Manchester is now served non-stop en route to Houston. And so, have you been aboard any of Singapore Airlines' Fifth Freedom services? And if not, which ones would you want to try? Let us know by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.